Hey friends, welcome back to my garden. It's been a little while. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jen. I do cooking, canning, and food preservation videos every Tuesday, and I do vlog content on Friday. If that seems like the sort of thing that you're into, I hope you'll consider subscribing and sticking around. Today, I'm going to do a long overdue garden tour just to show you some updates on what we did in the last garden vlog, and we're going to try to get some more seeds in the ground because on this day we are expecting a bunch of rain. It has been incredibly dry and we are finally going to be getting like rain in inches. So I want to get some seeds in the soil. The first thing is I'm just going to give you a quick little tour. You'll see that bed that was overgrown with weeds. I finally almost got it conquered. I'm just tackling it a little at a time, and that's becoming easier to do now that the weather's cooling off. There are still a few things that are doing really well in the garden. I did let all of the basil go to flower because, as you can see, the bees really enjoy the basil flowers, and I'm happy to provide that for them. Garden Kitty is doing Garden Kitty things, and he was surprised when he got to come in the garden on this day and saw that all of the catnip had come back. I trimmed it back very short and I dried a bunch of it for the cats for over the winter, and it's actually regrowing, so that's pretty cool. Some of the flowers are still hanging in there. The straw flowers and the calendula are still going strong. I could rip them out because some of them look kind of pitiful, but being this late in the season, there's just really not a lot of food for the bees. So I figure if I can just leave a few flowers, maybe that helps a little bit. The forgotten hot banana pepper that was buried under the spoon tomato plant has bounced back nicely and is putting on peppers, and as you can see here, they're starting to turn purple. I did go ahead and pick those two. Towards the end of the season, this flush of peppers I've noticed is just a lot smaller. There's another volunteer catnip that popped up in the garden. In the last garden video, I planted an entire bed of green beans, thinking, I would be just plush with green beans. Well, you can see that the germination on that was pretty pitiful and kind of terrible. That's okay. I'm not upset about it. If any of these green beans that are in right now make green beans, I'm doing better than I originally planned because I wasn't planning to do a second run of green beans at all. The squash and the zucchini that I planted, two plants are doing really well. One zucchini and one squash, as you can see here in the center, but the rest of them, I don't know what happened. It's all the same soil, it's all the same amendments, but the rest of those just look tiny, really puny, really sickly. The sugar snap peas have all done really well. Every one that I planted comes up, and they're just getting long enough now to sort of reach the trellis, so pretty soon I'll be teaching them how to go up. We're not even going to discuss this hot mess of cucamelons right now, but I'm definitely going to circle back around to that in just a minute. And this is that other quad of sugar snap peas I did. I planted 5, and it looks like only 4 came up, but later as I looked a little closer, that other hole over there, that other void, there is actually another one that has come up. It's just very small. That is the other catnip, the original catnip that started all of this mess in the garden. My peppers are doing okay. I won't say that they're exactly thriving, but they're still making peppers, albeit small ones. And my poblanos have a ton of peppers on them, but I'm just not really sure that the poblanos are going to have time to do anything. In fact, the two biggest ones that I have on the poblano plant itself are starting to change colors, and they're no bigger than like the palm of my hand. And I know poblanos are supposed to be pretty sizable peppers, so I think I'm just going to leave them alone. Hopefully we won't have any more like really low 40-degree nights for a little while, and maybe these peppers can get their second wind and kind of get a little bigger before I go ahead and pick them. Either way, I'm still going to pick them and we're still going to eat them. I just had big plans for the way I wanted to use them. The okra here is clearly still doing well. I'm picking, a handful of okra about every other day. You can see on some of the leaves of the okra plant, it's starting to look a little distressed, and that doesn't surprise me being the way that the temperatures have been up and down. Like I said, we've had 90-degree days, and then we had a stretch where the temperature during the day didn't get above like 65, and at night the temperatures were in like the low 40s. It was the strangest thing. And now our nighttime temperatures are starting to be cool again, but I've gotten plenty of okra this season. I got enough to can some pickled okra. I actually have a batch of okra and banana peppers fermenting right now. So, if it's time for the okra to go, I won't be heartbroken. I got okra, and any okra was more than I thought I was actually going to get, since this was the first time that I've ever tried to actually grow okra myself. Originally, I had planned that once I, pulled the okra out of this bed and the flowers, I was going to use this bed to plant my garlic and onions. Well, now I'm undecided if I want to grow onions next year. I definitely want to grow garlic, but what I'm probably going to do is just end up using some seed garlic off of the garlic that I harvested from my homegrown garlic rather than buy it this time. Sometimes life just gets in the way and messes with your plans, and you just have to do the best you can. So, onto these cucamelons that have been completely neglected for weeks. There are so many cucamelons on this dirt that I don't think I will ever have to intentionally plant cucamelons again for the rest of my gardening time. Like, there will probably just always be cucamelons here in this bed. But that's okay. I like them. If I have any volunteers pop up here next year, I've already talked to my garden buddy, my daughter, and we decided that we would train the cucamelons to run along the edge of the outside fence, the exterior fence. That way it's not interfering with anything that we put in this bed. And my goal for next year is to put my indeterminate tomatoes in this bed. So I really don't need little cucamelons coming up everywhere and strangling out my tomatoes. Out of all of the time that I've spent in the garden on this day, about 85 or 90% of it was just spent picking cucamelons, because everywhere I looked, there were more and more and more cucamelons. And I was running it through my head, what in the world am I going to do with all of these cucamelons? I already have a bunch of refrigerator pickled ones. So I decided these cucamelons are going to be fermented because I do not have the refrigerator space right now. But as you can see, this bowl is pretty full. And honestly, there were more. I just gave up. I was tired of picking them. Garden burnout is real, especially with the cucamelons this year. So moving on here, I'm planting some spinach. I don't really have a lot of um, hope that the spinach is actually going to come up. I'm doing 2 beds of assorted lettuce for like the cut and come again method. And I'm doing 2 different varieties of radishes on the other side of this bed. Now I know for a lot of this stuff, it's kind of late for me to be getting it going. The radishes and the lettuce, I think the back of the packet said that they really should be planted by like mid-August, and it is September. However, that being said, the weather's been really weird this year, and I think the prolonged weather outlook is like that we're supposed to still have a pretty continuous warm spell after all of this rain passes us by. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And if nothing happens, it is not the end of the world. I used up some seeds that were kind of old and needed to be used anyway. And I can always plant more lettuce and spinach and radishes next spring. That is the glory of gardening. If it doesn't work out this year, guess what? You can try it again next year. If it doesn't work out in the spring, guess what? You can try it again in the fall. So we'll just have to wait and see how this goes. Now, I'm not going to give anything that I planted today a heavy water because, as I said, we have like 4 to 5 inches of rain coming, but I am going to give it a light mist just to kind of set that really dry soil in place so that when it does start raining, it doesn't float away. So I'd like to hear from you in the comments below. What are you doing in your garden right now? Have you recently planted any seeds for the fall? Leave me a comment and let me know. Until next time, friends, happy gardening.